Hey guys, tonight we step softly into the dustier corners of ancient Greece, not the dramatic epics or flashy battles, but the quiet, ridiculous, slow-burning myths that somehow survived the centuries. You'll wander into caves with gods who forget to wear pants, tiptoe across sunlit meadows where curses bloom like daisies, and yes, try not to fall asleep while someone rolls a rock uphill forever. Imagine the sleepy heat of Mount Cyllene. It's morning, and the goats are already complaining. Somewhere nearby, a baby is born, but not just any baby. This one is Hermes, and he's barely out of the celestial womb before he's scheming. You watch as the infant god wriggles free from his cradle, eyes gleaming with mischief and a business plan. He's just hours old, but he's already bored and looking for some drama. So naturally, he decides to steal Apollo's cows. Now, when most babies crawl, it's impressive. When Hermes does it, it's criminal. He toddles out of the cave, finds some cow tracks, and does something so sneakily clever it makes your sleep-deprived brain smile. He puts his sandals on backwards. That way, it looks like the cows are walking in the opposite direction. It's the divine version of moonwalking, and no one will ever suspect a newborn. As the sun rises higher, you trail behind him through fields still damp with dew, watching him herd these massive animals while whistling like he owns them. Apollo, god of the sun, is none the wiser, yet. Now here's your fun mainstream fact: Hermes becomes the god of thieves, travelers, and messages. That's right, this backward sandaled baby grows up to be the divine version of a postal worker who occasionally lies about your Amazon delivery. Later that same day, Hermes stumbles upon a tortoise. You think he'll pet it, maybe talk to it. But no. He invents the lyre. He hollows out the shell, adds some sheep guts, and strums a little lullaby like a celestial hipster. Scholars still argue whether the myth of Hermes stealing the cows is a metaphor for the moon stealing light from the sun, or if the Greeks just had a thing for cows. Who's to say? Eventually, Apollo realizes something's up. His cows are gone. He's not mad, he's sun god furious, which is like being regular mad, but with more glowing. He storms over to Maia's cave, where Hermes is back in his cradle pretending to sleep. Little con artist even fake snores. Apollo picks him up like a suspicious loaf of bread. Hermes bats his eyelashes, stretches adorably, and says in the most innocent tone possible, "Cows? What cows? I'm just a baby." You try not to laugh. Apollo definitely doesn't. A trial happens. Zeus gets involved. And Hermes, slippery little negotiator that he is, offers Apollo the tortoise-shell lyre as a bribe. Ahem, gift. Apollo's rage melts into fascination. Suddenly he's strumming love songs instead of punching clouds. And just like that, Hermes becomes legit. Apollo forgives him. Zeus chuckles. The cows chew cud in peace. Hermes gets a fancy job as the messenger god, complete with winged sandals and a license to be mildly chaotic forever. So yes, you just watched a god baby commit a felony, gaslight his older brother, and charm his way into a promotion. And you did it all without moving a muscle. You lie there now, imagining the tinkling strings of Hermes' lyre echoing across the fields, somewhere between dream and myth. A trickster's lullaby, written in gut and shell. The sun hangs lazily over Mount Olympus as you drift sideways into another cozy pocket of godly nonsense. This time, it's less about criminal babies and more about the world's most beautiful woman getting stuck in a mythological love triangle. Yes, it's Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and turning perfectly normal relationships into messy Olympic soap operas. You're lounging in a temple courtyard now. Marble columns stretch above you, vines curl around statues, and the air smells faintly of roses, olives, and incense. Somewhere nearby, doves flutter romantically, but even they seem vaguely annoyed. Why? Because Aphrodite is, once again, juggling her lovers like a tired improv performer at a very sparkly show. So here's the official setup. Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus, god of blacksmiths, fire, and unfortunate social skills. He's sweet but not exactly cover of a romance novel material. Think singed eyebrows and permanent soot stains. Enter Ares. God of war. Gorgeous. Shirt always suspiciously missing. Mood, always smoldering. You don't need to be a mythologist to know where this is going. Now, you'd think love triangles among the gods would be dramatic, thunderous, maybe even heart-wrenching. Instead, it's mostly passive-aggressive banter, celestial sulking, and an enchanted belt that makes people fall in love with whoever's wearing it. Aphrodite wears it. Often. Hephaestus, for all his blacksmith-why brooding, is not an idiot. He knows something's up. So he crafts a trap, because of course he does. A literal net made of unbreakable, nearly invisible chains. He sets it above the marital bed and then goes on a business trip, like some kind of divine sitcom dad. Sure enough, Aphrodite and Ares fall right into the trap. Cue godly scandal. The net tightens mid-snuggle, and suddenly they're caught in an embarrassing, tangled mess. Hephaestus bursts in, not yelling, but smug. Very smug. He invites the other gods to witness the scene. Now imagine, a bunch of divine beings standing around, trying very hard not to laugh. Apollo cracks a joke. Hermes snorts. Poseidon just wants to know when brunch is. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to critique arranged marriages or just entertain wine-drunk Athenians who loved watching beautiful people fail at commitment. Fun mainstream fact. In ancient Greek art, Hephaestus is often the only god shown working, a sign that even then, labor wasn't considered particularly divine. Ares, meanwhile, mostly lounges and stabs things. Back in the myth, Hephaestus demands that Zeus annul the marriage. Zeus responds with an ancient shrug, clearly wishing he'd taken the day off. Eventually, Poseidon steps in, smooth-talks everyone into releasing the couple from the net, and peace-ish, is restored. But here's where it gets deliciously boring. Despite all the drama, Aphrodite just sort of keeps doing what she wants. She continues seeing Ares, occasionally flirts with mortals, and shows up in almost every myth involving chaos, desire, or cursed love potions. And Hephaestus? He sulks back to his forge, makes some robots, and builds the gods a bunch of cool weapons, probably while listening to breakup ballads forged from molten bronze. As you stretch out and settle deeper into your pillow, you start to notice how little these gods actually learn from their mistakes. Aphrodite never picks a side. Ares never wears a shirt. Hephaestus never goes to therapy. The enchanted belt gets passed around a bit, because what's the point of a magical love trap if not to spark even more misunderstandings? It shows up in the Trojan War, several awkward dinner parties, and at least one extremely confusing mortal affair. There's a calm in the chaos, though. An odd predictability. You realize that, while the gods fight and flirt and trap each other in bed nets, Mount Olympus remains utterly unchanged. The columns don't crack. The doves still coo. The ambrosia gets served on time. In the end, no one really wins the love triangle. Which is fitting, because gods don't need resolution, they just need attention, scandal, and the occasional enchanted accessory. And you? You're here for it. Watching the drama unfold like a sleepy background TV show with very nice sandals. The sky shifts gently now, softening from golden to a dreamy, underworld gray. Your toes sink into soil that feels just a little too warm, the air hums with silence, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of dried leaves and pomegranate juice. You're entering the quiet myth of Persephone, a girl who didn't ask for much, except maybe a snack that wouldn't curse her for eternity. Persephone, daughter of Demeter and goddess of springtime, is walking through a sunny meadow. There are daisies, yes. Butterflies, definitely. Birds chirp like they're paid to. You float beside her, the sunlight brushing your shoulders, and it all feels like the opening credits of a wholesome seasonal sitcom. Until the ground opens up. Like, literally opens. No dramatic warning, no villainous monologue. Just 1 minute she's picking flowers, and the next, whoosh, a chariot driven by Hades himself bursts through the earth. He scoops her up, disappears underground, and leaves behind only a fluttering petal. You blink. She blinks. Everyone's confused. Even Hades looks like he wasn't totally sure this plan was legal. Now, here's your mainstream fact. In classical Greek mythology, Persephone's story was meant to explain the seasons. Her descent into the underworld and return to the surface was nature's way of cycling through death and rebirth. Meanwhile, up on Olympus, Demeter is not having it. She's the goddess of agriculture, and she is furious. Crops wilt. Rivers sulk. Humans start to starve. No one dares mention flowers. Historians still argue whether Hades abducted Persephone or if she kind of chose to stay later on. Some versions of the myth depict her as a terrified prisoner, others show her gradually growing into her role as queen of the underworld. Mythology, the original unreliable narrator. While Demeter wanders the earth in dramatic slow motion, Zeus finally gets involved, again. He sends Hermes, yes, our favorite baby thief turned divine mailman, to the underworld to retrieve Persephone. Hades, trying to play it cool, offers Persephone a pomegranate. Not a bouquet. Not a heartfelt apology. A fruit. And she eats 6 seeds. Now, you're probably wondering how that's relevant. Here's the thing, eating anything in the underworld means you're tied to it. The Greeks had a rule about this, like ancient Airbnb terms of service. Persephone's snack binds her to Hades for 6 months of the year. So, that's the deal. 6 months above ground. Spring and summer. 6 months below, autumn and winter. It's a mythological custody arrangement disguised as agriculture. As you drift through the fields of Asphodel now, you realize how quiet the underworld is, not scary, just orderly. Hades isn't cruel. He's just, firm. Like a brooding librarian who only dates spring goddesses. And Persephone? She grows into her title. From weeping maiden to shadowy queen, she starts wearing darker robes, speaking in echoes, and developing a voice that could silence a room full of spirits. Mortals still fear her name, but some secretly admire her. The fringe tidbit? In certain regional cults, Persephone wasn't seen as a victim at all. She was a powerful underworld deity long before the whole flower-picking incident. Some scholars believe the myth was retrofitted to explain her dual roles. You and Persephone sit together now in the cool stone halls of the underworld, sipping tea brewed from river mist. Outside, the dead wait patiently in lines that never move. Inside, she tells you calmly, it's not so bad down here. Just don't eat the fruit. And when it's time to return to the surface again, when the first shoots of spring peek through the frost, you follow her upward. The air warms. The light shifts. You leave behind the realm of silence and step into birdsong again. But something's different. She's different. And somehow, so are you. The sky is crisp now, bluer, higher, and humming faintly with wind. You're high above the earth, not quite flying but drifting, weightless and warm, like a lazy feather caught in a draft. Below you, a glimmer of sunlight dances on the sea. Ahead? A boy with wings strapped to his back. His name is Icarus, and he's absolutely not going to follow instructions. You glance sideways at his father, Daedalus, who is calmly securing his own wings with wax and string. Master craftsman. Engineering genius. Probably also the kind of dad who double-checks your math homework. They've been imprisoned on the island of Crete, long story involving a labyrinth, a monster, and one very moody king. But today's not about minotaurs. It's about escape. Daedalus goes over the plan again: fly not too high, not too low. The sun will melt the wax if you get too close. The sea mist will weigh down your feathers if you fly too low. Just aim for the middle. Stay chill. Icarus nods. Smiles. You already know he's not going to listen. Here's your mainstream fact: Icarus and Daedalus are part of the larger myth cycle surrounding King Minos and the labyrinth. It's a cautionary tale, but the Greeks loved turning life-or-death decisions into poetic metaphors, especially if they involved wax. Icarus takes off. You follow. The air is cooler than expected, sharp and clean. Seagulls dart past. His wings actually work, feathered panels flapping rhythmically. It's exhilarating. The sky stretches like a sleepy canvas, and for a moment, everything is perfect. Then Icarus starts climbing. He whoops. Spins. Does a loop he definitely didn't practice. You shout, maybe gently suggest he stay level. He doesn't. He's flying higher now, laughing, hands out like he's conducting the clouds. Historians still argue whether the myth of Icarus was originally a warning about hubris or just a weirdly specific story invented by someone terrified of birds. A fringe tidbit? Some ancient texts claim Icarus actually made it much farther than people think, and that he didn't fall straight down, but drifted for hours before finally dropping into a part of the sea where even mermaids rolled their eyes. The wax begins to melt slowly. You smell it first, a faint, sweet scent like candle smoke in summer. Then feathers loosen, fluttering away like confetti. His wings sag. He looks up, panics briefly, then looks down. The sea waits. You try to catch him. You can't. He falls, not screaming, just tumbling softly, like a dream unspooling. The water doesn't even splash that much. The sun goes on shining. Daedalus watches, silent, wings still intact. This myth is weirdly quiet in its tragedy. No thunderbolts, no vengeance. Just a boy, a son, and an engineer's regret. Now you're drifting above the water. It's warm. Calming. A little sad. But not scary. Later, sailors claim they can still see feathers floating there, tiny white ones, caught in sea foam. They name the sea the Icarian, in his honor, which is honestly the nicest thing anyone does in Greek mythology. You stretch your limbs and feel the warmth of the wax on your own back. It hasn't melted. Not yet. You fly steady, a little wiser now. Not too high. Not too low. Just enough. You're floating now on the edge of a wide, endless sea. The sun is high, the waves are lazy, and the wind smells like salt, olives, and vaguely like someone just burned dinner. You're not alone. Sitting beside you is a man with sea-worn hands, a very furrowed brow, and the haunted look of someone who just refused to ask for directions for 10 years straight. This, of course, is Odysseus. King of Ithaca. Master tactician. Survivor of war. And possibly the most lost man in the ancient world. His ship creaks gently under your feet as he stares across the horizon, clearly trying to remember which way home is. Spoiler, he won't get there anytime soon. You begin your journey with him, tracing the long, meandering path from Troy to Ithaca, an odyssey so full of detours it makes Google Maps weep. Storms. Monsters. Magical detours. Every time he gets close, something drags him sideways. Mainstream fact, the Odyssey is Homer's epic about the return journey from the Trojan War. It's basically the ancient world's most chaotic road trip, minus gas stations. The first pit stop. The land of the Lotus Eaters. You touch down with Odysseus and his crew, who immediately start munching lotus flowers like sleepy brunchgoers. These flowers are a kind of narcotic. Peaceful. Dreamy. You feel it too, eyes heavier, limbs looser. But Odysseus? He yanks his crew back to the ship like a stressed-out camp counselor. "We are not staying here," he mutters, dragging them away from their soft pillows of petal-induced bliss. Next up, the Cyclops. You shiver slightly as you step into a shadowy cave with very questionable interior design, animal bones, half-eaten sheep, and one extremely large eyeball peering out of the dark. Polyphemus is not a great host. No snacks. No Wi-Fi. Also, he eats people. Odysseus, ever the clever mortal, tells him his name is Nobody. Then, he stabs him in the eye with a sharpened stick while the monster sleeps. The crew escapes by hiding under sheep. Yes, sheep. You gently grab hold of a woolly belly and shuffle awkwardly toward the exit. Polyphemus howls, "Nobody has blinded me," and the other Cyclopes just shrug. Classic divine loophole. Historians still argue whether Odysseus' tales were purely metaphorical or based on real Mediterranean sailing hazards. Either way, he was not winning any awards for efficiency. The fringe tidbit? In one forgotten local variant, Odysseus's crew actually liked the Lotus Eaters so much they staged a mutiny, begging to return and open a sleepy fruit cafe. That version didn't catch on. Back on the ship, the crew sails on, only to encounter Circe, the powerful enchantress who turns his men into pigs. You tiptoe through her luxurious forest estate, noting the suspicious number of troughs and oinking bushes. Odysseus resists her magic, with the help of some divine herbs. "Thank you, Hermes," and they spend an entire year on her island. A full year. That's not a detour, that's a lease agreement. Eventually, he leaves Circe, after double-checking he's not secretly a pig, and the ship sails onward through dangers like the sirens, beautiful creatures who sing sailors to their doom. Odysseus, curious as ever, ties himself to the mast so he can listen to the song without diving into the sea. His crew? They wear beeswax earplugs, clearly unimpressed. You listen too. The siren's song isn't screechy, it's soft, like a lullaby about everything you've ever longed for. You hum along before remembering, oh right, death. Maybe let's not. They pass Scylla and Charybdis next, giant sea monster and deadly whirlpool. Odysseus chooses the monster, loses a few men, but avoids getting sucked into the aquatic abyss. It's one of those choices where there are no good answers, just slightly slower disasters. By the time he finally washes up on Ithaca's shores, 10 years have passed. His house is full of suitors trying to marry his wife. His dog has died of loyalty. And everyone assumes he's long gone. But Odysseus, ever dramatic, returns in disguise, strings his bow, and makes quite the entrance. Classic homecoming energy. You lean back now, waves lapping softly at your side, and realize this wasn't a journey about finding home. It was about earning it. Every detour, every snack, every sheep-hugging escape, it all led here. And still, no directions were asked. It's peaceful now. A little too peaceful. You're sitting in a modest house, no thunderbolts, no flying monsters, no trident-wielding gods. Just a woman, a very suspicious-looking box, and a quiet hum of inevitable curiosity. Her name is Pandora. She hums as she dusts a shelf, smooths a tunic, waters a plant. And that box? It sits innocently in the corner. Lid sealed. Perfectly untouched. Probably containing absolutely nothing worth worrying about. You know better. Pandora was sculpted by the gods, literally. A divine group project. Each god gave her a gift, which, depending on your reading, may have been generosity, music, weaving, or a fully weaponized curiosity instinct. Zeus, in particular, had a plan: give her to humanity as a sort of cosmic prank. Mainstream fact time: in most Greek tellings, Pandora wasn't just the first woman, she was created as part of Zeus's revenge for Prometheus stealing fire for humanity. A divine, oops, all consequences, moment. So, the box, or technically a jar, if you're being scholarly, wasn't really a gift. It was a trap. Inside, all the troubles of the world. Disease, war, taxes, roommate drama. You name it, it's in there. But from the outside? It's just a pretty container. Pandora's husband, Epimetheus, whose name literally means afterthought, tells her not to open it. Trust me, he says, casually sipping ambrosia. Just, don't. She tries. Truly. You watch her avoid eye contact with it for a solid hour. She rearranges furniture. She brushes her hair 12 times. She pretends to be asleep. Then she opens it. There's no explosion. No dramatic lighting bolt. Just a gentle whoosh, like 1,000 invisible moths fluttering out. Sickness, sorrow, jealousy, bad haircut decisions, they all drift quietly into the world. You'd expect chaos. But it's more like a slow leak. Humanity begins coughing more, crying more, swiping on dating apps with increasing frustration. Historians still argue whether Pandora was meant as a symbol of tragic feminine temptation or just a catch-all explanation for why life is occasionally the worst. Spoiler, it's both, depending on which philosopher you ask. Fringe tidbit? Some ancient vase paintings depict the box as a sort of large, cake-shaped jar with decorative handles. So maybe humanity's downfall came from something that looked like grandma's cookie tin. Back in the house, Pandora slams the lid shut. She's wide-eyed, breathless, probably whispering, "Oops," under her breath. But it's too late. The world has changed. She hears something, though, a faint flutter, like one last moth still circling inside. She opens the lid again, cautiously. This time, only one thing comes out. Hope. Not a dramatic hope. Not fireworks or redemption arcs. Just a soft, steady glow. The kind of hope that whispers, things might not always be this terrible. You sit beside her now. The jar is empty. The world is heavier. But not hopeless. Pandora hugs her knees, and you both stare at the glow, letting it warm your faces like the last ember of a nearly dead fire. The gods don't say anything. They don't need to. The damage is done, but so is the beginning of something else. You shift slightly, curling closer to the blanket of night, and wonder. If you had a jar, and a divine warning not to open it, would you resist? Yeah. Same here. You're walking now, slowly, dreamily, through a rolling, wheat-colored countryside that feels suspended in time. The wind carries the distant clatter of armor and horse hooves, but mostly it's quiet. Golden fields stretch ahead, and in the center of it all, a tall, sulking man with the worst case of grudgy main character energy in ancient history. Achilles. You spot him near his tent, sharpening a spear that honestly doesn't need to be any sharper. His eyebrows are permanently furrowed, like he's perpetually seconds away from yelling at someone for mispronouncing his name. This guy? He's not just a warrior. He's the warrior, the unstoppable force of the Trojan War. Except, right now, he's sulking. Welcome to year 9 of a very, very drawn-out siege. You're outside the walls of Troy, where Greek forces have been camping for almost a decade, trying to sack a city over a woman named Helen. Yes, that Helen, the one with the allegedly face-launching 1000 ship's energy. But this section? It's not about her. It's about what happens when the most powerful fighter in the world decides he's done with group projects. Historical fact break: Homer's Iliad, the epic that covers part of this war, doesn't actually end with the fall of Troy. It ends with a funeral. Achilles' story, like much of Greek myth, is more about moods than conclusions. So, here's what happened. Agamemnon, the Greek leader and proud owner of terrible people skills, insulted Achilles by taking a war prize girl named Briseis. Achilles, deeply offended and extremely dramatic, withdrew from the war entirely. He basically rage-quit the entire conflict and went to pout in his tent. And things went downhill fast. With Achilles refusing to fight, the Trojans gained the upper hand. Enter Hector, the noble, golden boy prince of Troy. He's brave, he's loyal, and he doesn't deserve what's coming. Fringe tidbit, Achilles, during his break from battle, didn't just mope. Some versions say he played the lyre. Like, full-on angsty guitar hero, singing songs about glory and betrayal, maybe with a few eyeliner tears if it were modern times. Patroclus, Achilles, very close friend, historians still argue whether they were companions, lovers, or simply battle bros with intense eye contact, begs him to return to the field. Achilles refuses. So Patroclus borrows his armor and leads the Greeks instead. Big mistake. You're there when Hector strikes him down. The battlefield goes quiet, just for a heartbeat. Achilles hears the news, and everything changes. He emerges from his tent, armor gleaming, rage glowing around him like wildfire. No more moody singing. No more tent sulking. This is wrath now. Pure, divine wrath. He charges into battle with the fury of a god, and that's not just poetic. His mother, Thetis, is a sea goddess. There's something eerie about the way arrows seem to avoid him, how entire legions part like wheat before a scythe. Achilles meets Hector at the gates of Troy. They fight, fierce, fast, mythic. No background music necessary, because the silence of every soldier watching is soundtrack enough. Hector falls. But Achilles doesn't stop there. He ties Hector's body to his chariot and drags it around the walls of Troy for days, desecrating a noble man in front of his grieving family. Even his own soldiers start side-eyeing him. That's the thing about Achilles. He's not a hero in the modern sense. He's wrath. Glory. Pain. He's the storm, not the shelter. Historians still argue whether Achilles' actions make him a tragic figure or just a deeply flawed sociopath with great cheekbones. Eventually, Hector's father, old King Priam, sneaks into Achilles' camp to beg for his son's body. He kneels before the killer of his child, offering gold, dignity abandoned. And Achilles, finally, softens. You sit by the fire as the two men talk. Achilles sees his own father in Priam's face. He sees his own mortality reflected in the weary king's eyes. He returns Hector's body. For one brief moment, the war pauses. And Achilles, glorious, impossible Achilles, remembers how to be human. As you drift further into the hush of night, one last whisper reaches your ears. Achilles was later killed by an arrow to the heel. The only vulnerable part of him. That's where we get the term, Achilles' heel, a weakness hiding in strength. You wonder what yours is. You're still near the smoldering ruins of the Greek campfires, but now the winds shift, carrying a different scent, salt, wood smoke, and something older. Behind you, Achilles fades like a shadow in a mirror, and you turn toward the city he died trying to conquer. Troy. Tonight, you slip past its high, proud walls, not with swords, but with silence. Inside, the Trojans are celebrating. The Greeks? Gone. At least, that's what it looks like. You pad softly through the wide, torchlit avenues of Troy, past laughing warriors and dancing children. They think the war is over. 10 long years. But outside the gates, just out of sight, sits a massive wooden horse. It's huge. Comically huge. You almost want to climb inside and check it out, but hey, that's not your job. It's someone else's mistake. Historical fact, the story of the Trojan horse doesn't appear in Homer's Iliad. It's in later works like the Aeneid and various Greek tragedies, told through fragments. So if the details feel murky, that's because they are. The Trojans debate what to do with the horse. Should they burn it? Push it off a cliff? Or pull it into the city as a gift to the gods? Enter Sinon, a smooth-talking Greek left behind on purpose. He spins a tale about the Greeks offering the horse as a sacred relic. He lies like a sleep-deprived barista inventing a new latte name on the spot, and the Trojans? They buy it. Fringe tidbit, some versions say the horse was so big they had to knock down part of the city wall to get it through. Imagine doing that much remodeling for a party decoration. And just like that, the horse sits in the heart of Troy. Night falls. Torches dim. Wine flows. You tiptoe through the city square as the last reveler slumps beside a fountain, wine cup still in hand. Above you, something shifts. Wood creaks. A hidden door opens. Out come the Greeks, silent, deadly, very much not gone. Odysseus, Menelaus, and their best warriors pour from the belly of the beast like a nightmare unfolding in real time. They open the city gates from within. Outside, the rest of the Greek army, who totally didn't go home, storms in. The sack of Troy begins. Flames climb the temple walls. Statues fall. Children cry. You press yourself into the shadows, feeling the heat and panic and awful inevitability of it all. Among the chaos, one man runs not to escape, but to carry something precious. Aeneas. You spot him carrying his elderly father on his back and guiding his young son by the hand. He's not a hero in the traditional Greek sense, he doesn't fight for glory. He flees to survive. And in that choice, he becomes something new. Historians still argue whether Aeneas was meant to be a historical bridge or a political symbol for Rome's eventual rise, but in this moment, he's just a man trying to carry his family through fire. You follow him out of the city, into the dark hills beyond Troy, where the stars don't yet know what's coming. Back inside the city, the gods are not silent. Some rage. Some weep. Athena turns her back. Poseidon, who once helped build Troy's walls, watches them crumble. And Aphrodite? She guides her mortal descendants out of danger. Aeneas is her bloodline, after all. You wonder if any of the gods ever feel regret. Probably not. They're more into poetic irony and turning people into trees. The Greeks ransack what's left. Priam, the old king who once held his dead son's body, is slaughtered at the altar. Cassandra, the prophetess who predicted this exact outcome but was cursed never to be believed, is dragged off, her truth echoing in silence. That's the thing about Greek myth, even when you're right, the gods still find a way to make you miserable. Amid the ruin, Helen is discovered. Menelaus, her husband, raises his sword, then lowers it. Depending on the version, he's either enchanted by her beauty or just too tired to continue the drama. You're left wondering, was she really to blame for all this? Or was she just a myth-sized scapegoat in a very, very messy divorce? The fire fades. By dawn, Troy is ash. And that big wooden horse? Left in the city square, empty, scorched, and deeply smug. As you walk through the ruins one last time, the dust clings to your feet. It's quiet now, too quiet. But in the silence, you can feel the stories still breathing under the stones. Some say the Trojans were foolish to trust the horse. Others say they had no choice. Historians still argue whether the whole event actually happened, or if it's an allegory for how cities fall. Not from without, but from the moment they invite something dangerous inside and call it sacred. Sleep presses in like a heavy, soft curtain. One last ember crackles on the wind. And somewhere out there, a man named Aeneas begins the long walk west. You're trudging now, yes, still trudging, through dust and salt air along a ragged coastline. Troy is behind you, just a memory smeared in smoke and betrayal. Ahead lies uncertainty. But you're not alone. Aeneas walks with purpose, even if he's not quite sure where he's going. He's got his father Anchises piggybacked, his young son Ascanius in tow, and somewhere beneath his tired expression is a stubborn ember. Not rage. Not glory. Legacy. This is your slow passage through exile. You tag along as he and his ragtag band of survivors drift from place to place like mythological couch surfers. First stop. Thrace. Beautiful. Lush. Haunted. Aeneas tries to plant a new city there, digs into the ground, and, surprise, the soil bleeds. Actual human blood. Because apparently, the land had already absorbed a murdered ally's body. Classic ancient real estate red flag. Historians still argue whether this part of the tale reflects a historical attempt to explain failed Greek colonies in the region or if it's just another cautionary story wrapped in spooky ambience. You leave quickly. Good call. Next stop, Delos. A sacred island, rumored birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. Here, an oracle tells Aeneas he must seek the land of his ancestors. Sounds great, except no one specifies which ancestors. You awkwardly watch as Aeneas misinterprets it and heads to Crete. Wrong answer. On Crete, things go badly. Famine. Plague. Ghostly dreams yelling at you. Honestly, you've had vacations go south, but this one's on another level. Aeneas gives up and sails again, hoping signs will become clearer. He ends up in the Strophades Islands, where he meets the Harpies. Yes, those Harpies. Winged monsters with women's faces and a bad attitude. They scream, they poop on the food, not kidding, and they curse Aeneas's journey. A gentle reminder that Greek mythology loves to sprinkle a little body horror into its bedtime tales. Quirky tidbit, the Harpy leader, Celaeno, foretells that the Trojans won't find their new home until they're so desperate they eat their own tables. Which sounds like nonsense now, but keep it in your back pocket. You'll need it later. You continue. From one place to the next, Aeneas visits old friends, new enemies, and a few divine speed bumps. In Epirus, he meets Helenus, one of Priam's sons who somehow survived the fall of Troy. Andromache is there too, Hector's widow. Together they offer some real estate advice. Go west, Aeneas. Go west. You board yet another ship. The sea is basically your Airbnb now. A storm tosses you to Sicily, where Aeneas holds funeral games in honor of his father, who has finally passed. It's a surprisingly wholesome moment: races, boxing, archery. You can almost hear the soft background lute music. But even here, the gods won't leave him alone. Juno, queen of the gods and longtime Aeneas hater, stirs up trouble again. She incites the Trojan women to burn the ships in a moment of despair. For once, the fire isn't total devastation, just a firm nudge toward leaving the sea behind. But Aeneas? He's still got more waterlogged chapters to go. After a pit stop in Carthage, no, wait, we're skipping Carthage for now, that deserves its own chaos, you finally hit the shores of Italy. Not with fanfare. Not with parades. Just quiet waves and soft soil underfoot. Aeneas doesn't even realize he's home yet. The omens haven't shown themselves, and the idea of Rome is still just mist in the minds of gods. Here's a mainstream historical fact: the myth of Aeneas arriving in Italy was Rome's way of grafting its identity onto the grandeur of Troy, giving itself an ancient pedigree older than Greece itself. A sort of PR campaign by poets with lyres. But for you, standing beside Aeneas in this moment, it's just wind and trees. You've been traveling for what feels like lifetimes, and this, finally, might be soil that doesn't spit ghosts or scream prophecies. Of course, peace doesn't last long. But you already knew that. The king of the region, Latinus, welcomes Aeneas at first. His daughter Lavinia? She's unmarried. Which, in mythology, is basically a ticking time bomb. Aeneas is offered her hand. All seems well. Until Turnus shows up. Turnus is Lavinia's original fiancé, and he is not amused. He sees Aeneas as a foreign interloper. Spoiler, he's not wrong. Soon, you're right back in the rhythm of war drums and angry warriors. But this isn't Troy. This is something else. Smaller in scale, maybe, but heavier somehow. More personal. You feel it in the air, this isn't just about cities anymore. It's about who gets to shape the future. As Aeneas builds alliances and prepares for battle, you sneak away for a moment to reflect on how far you've come, from the smoking towers of Troy to the misty fields of Italy. You wonder, briefly, what it means to be chosen by the gods. Because from your perspective, it looks like a lot of shipwrecks and funerals. Historians still debate whether Aeneas was a genuine cultural bridge between Greek epic and Roman ideology or just a convenient character for empire-building storytelling. You don't have the answer. But you do have the image of a tired man, sword at his side, building a home in a land that's not quite his yet. Aeneas watches the horizon, still searching for peace. You, on the other hand, are starting to yawn.